everyone. Welcome back to the Stranger Story podcast. And today we're going to discuss something quite interesting. I think our title is Look at Me, I've got content. Why aren't decision makers impressed? So we're gonna go down to something quite fundamental, I think. If you've been following our series of podcasts, we've been talking about meaningful marketing, purposeful marketing, making it relevant for your audience, for your product, for yourselves. Yeah, and as usual, today I have you have me and you have my good friend Naeem.
Hello, everyone. And yes, today's topic is, I think, one of the most relevant topic in marketing at the moment because it's about content and how content can make the meaning, why decision makers are getting into content marketing, those kind of stuff. Yeah, it would be interesting.
Exactly the point. Exactly. You know, I mean, I think if we talk about connecting to people, if we talk about building relationships, if we talk about transferring knowledge and meaning through different communication channels, through different symbols, through different means, to basically get people to absorb your message, to get people to understand your message, I think it all boils down to the content. It all boils down to what are you saying, right? How you're saying it, is it digital, online, offline, email, a video ad, doesn't matter, because that is the how, right? But at the end of the day, it's the what. What are you saying? That's what makes people care.
Yes.
That's what makes people want to know more about you, your product, or maybe know something about themselves. So that's why content, I think, is as Naeem says, very, very important. And I think it's about time that marketing has a new buzzword. I think marketing is very, very used to buzzwords.
What's the buzzword?
Right? We're very big on buzzwords.
What's the buzzword?
So I want to introduce a new buzzword, Naeem. I want to introduce the word contenting. Content marketing. Contenting.
Yeah,
right?
and elaborate a bit. Elaboration on the contenting. So what?
So basically, I'm adjectifying content, right? Because you wanna make the content actionable. You wanna make this content. You wanna make it come alive because you want it to do something. So it's an adjective now, right? And then content is also has a different meaning in the English language, isn't it? The ability to be satisfied. Yes. So contenting is probably my assertion here is that. By delivering this content, making it actionable, you're going to be satisfied. Mm-hmm. So that's contenting right there. So I'm going to introduce this term now. So I'm going to, we should introduce a hashtag maybe, hashtag contenting.
So Heiko, what do you think? So because we are bombarded with content right and left, everywhere we go. What do you think? Like, what's the goal of this contenting or content marketing? Like, what's actually these people who are actually pushing this content? What are they trying to achieve?
I like how this contenting thing just rolls off the tongue. I think it's gonna catch on. Anyway, I think that content marketing has always been a very fundamental part of marketing, right? It's been at the core of a lot of the marketing things that we do. Mm-hmm. It's just that I think we never really focused on it, right? Because it felt like it was. You have to deliver a message, right? Whatever that message may be. I think now, thanks to data, thanks to different sources of knowledge, thanks to better understanding of the consumer, their behaviors, what they're interested in, the fact that user profiles or customer profiles has become so much more dense over the years. Mm-hmm. This has allowed for contenting to evolve, for contenting to be a lot more relevant, right? I think that we've always had content. Back in the days when there were huge billboards by the highways, right? With one-liners or an image or something just to capture the attention for 5 seconds as you drive past, that is already content. It's just that was the time when we had one piece of content and we're trying to access as many people as possible, right? We're trying to go for scale, basically. Whether or not it's relevant or meaningful is secondary. The point is scale, because we want to maximize our ROI, right? Our return on investment and all the investments we make with these ads. But these days, we have the ability to narrow it down to create content that actually that actually resonates with whoever we're trying to reach out to. And this could, I think, for me, this is a very exciting space. It's a very exciting part of marketing that continues to evolve because we can leverage different sources of technology, right? YouTube, for example, the ability to upload as whatever videos that you want to allows for that freedom to author, freedom to create, freedom to use different types of media, as well as different types of content in order to try and appeal to people. I think, and I think for me this is exciting because it's where the creativity comes in, isn't it?
Yeah, you were actually brought a lot of stuff regarding content marketing. You were talking about scaling. You were talking about awareness, that you were present as you were reaching out to people. But I think another fundamental goal of content or content marketing or contenting is actually attention, right? To grab the attention of your audience. At the moment, you are seeing long form content, short form content, all sort of stuff that marketers are trying. And I was actually listening to this podcast, and this guy was talking about, it's so tough at the moment for content creators or content marketers because our attention span is very short. And the guy who he was talking to, he actually said there is actually nothing like that in a way, because the movies exist, which is 3 hours long. Podcasts exist, which is 1 hour, 1.5 hour, but it's not really long content. It's actually about being boring. It's boring content, so nobody is interested. So with this content, how you can make meaning so then your audience can relate, right? That you are creating content which actually showing enough value to the person who it's interacting with. Because at the very beginning, we actually talked about how marketing generally is actually a way or method of communication, right? So how you are communicating with your content which actually excites the person who's actually finds it interesting, right? So if you think about contenting, can you actually think about someone who's doing it like really good, or can you think about some bad examples of contenting? Because I'm pretty sure you are coming across content all day long whenever you are scrolling, whenever you are on the street, like you said, the billboard, it's also part of content, right? So what do you think? Can you get some hardcore stuff?
I think that I think this is I think this question needs to be taken in context of how that content is delivered also, because I think these days because of the multiple channels that you can receive content, and that's why we're bombarded with content, right? As you said, that's why we're getting content, we're constantly being stimulated. So if you're constantly being stimulated, then all the stimulus will start to fade out and feel the same, right? So then what do you consider as effective content that you can remember, right? Can you recall the recall rate of that particular slogan or that particular ad is the highest? Does that make it effective? Right? But that's where we discern between what is effective and what is meaningful, because you can have loud sort of ads. You can have raunchy ads. You can have ads that force you to take up and sit up and take notice, and that could be something absurd, right? Like a long form. I think in the past there were these long form like shot almost like a movie sort of ads. I think some Nike was good at this in the 90s, right? All the football ads was like a mini movie, right? So that is something we remember, right? And like you said, that wasn't about how much attention span you had, because those are like 5-6 minute sort of advertisements at one go. And then nowadays we have 30-second shorts, right? Or 10-second ads that you can skip on YouTube,
Right.
basically, right? So that we have to discern between what is actually effective and what is actually meaningful. And of course, it's like a Venn diagram, right? There is a part that overlaps here. Something that is there are ads that are completely effective. There are ads, and by effective, my KPI would be I can remember it. In the whole day full of stimuli, I can remember this one ad.
Yes.
And there are content that is highly meaningful, right? And then there is this overlapping ones that are effective and meaningful at the same time. I can remember and I can relate, right? And that's the goal, basically. And that's what we're trying to hit.
Right.
So I would say, if we look at those highly effective ads, things that you can remember, right? I think that also goes back. That's how I say it's about how those ads or how that message or that content is being repeated to you, is being transferred to you. Because the more you repeat it, the more you remember, isn't it? So, like, for example, there's this new Adidas, I think Adidas original sneaker ad, which keeps appearing on YouTube all the time. No, I don't have any affinity to sneakers at all. I don't wear sneakers. I'm not a sneakers person.
Yeah.
But for some reason, this ad keeps appearing when I'm on YouTube, and I remember it. Therefore, it's effective,
Yeah.
isn't it? It has nice music, to be fair, and the way it's shot is very nice. But is it meaningful to me? Am I gonna buy a pair of sneakers? Probably not, because I'm not a sneakers person myself. So, in terms of meaningfulness, it's not very meaningful for me. It's not very well targeted to me, because I might have bought something from Adidas maybe 3 months ago, or in the last 100 days, but it's not sneakers. So you are obviously, your algorithm is a bit off there. But because you keep repeating it, I remember. So it is effective, I gotta say, right? Is it meaningful? Not so much, right? But sometimes there are these ads. I'm interested in cars, for example. I like the idea of cars, for example. So when I see a car ad, right, even if I only see it once, I remember, right? It's something that I recall, right? So, for example, I think there was an ad for the new Land Rover, for the new Land Rover Defender, right? I think it was in conjunction with at the time, I think it was in conjunction with COVID, right? They were using these Land Rover Defenders to send out food and supplies in the UK, right? And Land Rover was supplying these Defenders as part of, I guess their CSR sort of initiative. And I remember that because the Land Rover Defenders were painted in white, right? And then they showed all these healthcare workers and all that transferring all these food onto the Defenders. And basically, that was brilliant. That was very meaningful, right? Because you're dealing with something that is of my interest. You're dealing with a very current affair topic, which is at the time was COVID.
Yep.
You're dealing with, you're also trying to point out how useful this vehicle is.
Yep.
So you are also transferring the product story. So I would say that was a nice overlap in between. Of course, it was meaningful, and I remember it, and it's effective as well, right? So I would say that's one example of those are some examples I would think at the top of my head of between these two. If we have these two criteria, basically, right, on what is effective. How about you? Have you heard of, or can you recall anything that is either effective or meaningful?
So
or
the examples you actually shared, actually good ones. And it's particularly B2C, and I think I can think of some B2B. So I can, on the top of my head, I can think about HubSpot and MailChimp, the way they are doing their content marketing. Right. So if you actually go out there, HubSpot kind of figure out, like, the even though they are actually providing a marketing cloud and CRM system, they understood their niche and what are the needs around that niche. So every time you ask something about marketing, and you search on Google, you search on YouTube, you will always find HubSpot on the first page. You will always find a tutorial that someone from the HubSpot actually showing, like, how to do content marketing. What is content marketing? What is email marketing? How do you do marketing? Like anything that relates to marketing, they have it. And same actually goes for MailChimp. How they are actually creating content around, and they actually understood the need. Whoever is interested in email marketing, what sort of problems they will face. and they actually collected all these questions, and they also predicted what can be the future problems, and they actually created content about it, right? So every time as a marketer you are searching something, they will always come up, you know, and that's how their content is actually creating meaning, even though probably this content is not relevant to the product they're selling, but they are sort of creating a brand, you know. So when you think about Adidas or Nike or this other, like in B2C sector, you know, the thing is, like, you can run some sort of, like, I don't know, Google ad campaign so that you can convert people and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that is not branding. You only have a brand when people actually comes to you. Right? People actually comes to you. You don't go to them. They comes to you because they know you. You know, they care for your product. They care for Patagonia and what they stand for. They care about Apple and the Apple ecosystem. They care about the sneakers that Adidas is selling out, right? So they actually, with, I think, another more important goal, I think, with the content actually makes, it actually creates an audience, and you only have a brand when you have an audience, right?
Yes.
And so I want to throw this question at you. So what do you think? See, I have a business and I'm selling a product or services, right? But I'm not just making content. Like, is it necessary that I only make the content about the niche, or I actually go out there and create content about what's meaningful to these people? So, do you understand? Did you understand the question? What do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very interesting proposition. I think that's a very interesting problem, and I'm sure a lot of people are struggling with it, right? Should you make your content that is relevant to your audience, or something your audience will want to hear, or do you want to make content that that is relevant to you because you want to promote your product, service, or message, whatever your message may be, right? Regardless of who it is. I guess it's a bit like maybe if I have an analogy here, it's a bit like should you actually talk to people directly, right? About and to talk to people directly, you would need to basically entice them to listen to you, right? Or should you just start screaming at people without them actually paying any attention to you? Isn't it? You know, it's like those. I think in several cities I've noticed that there's always a guy who is, I think, preaching maybe, and he's just standing there by the bus station or train station, and he's just talking about the Bible or whatever, and he's just talking and talking, but no one's really paying attention to it. But he is getting his message across, right? Because technically he is talking about what he wants to talk about, his niche, but nobody's listening.
Yeah.
So then it goes back to I think a couple of things. I think it's the right answer is probably a balance of the two. If we put it in a graph on a y-axis and an x-axis, right, we're probably gonna aim for something in the middle there, right? But I think there are several factors that affect this, right? For example, what product or are you trying to put out there? What is the purpose that you're trying to put out there? Like you said, if you have a brand and you already have an audience, a captive audience that you've managed to catch already, who are either like Apple users or PlayStation users or Xbox users, who are very, very brand loyal, who would pay attention to every single announcement you make, then you're probably leaning more towards the niche, right? Or if you're a B2B product, a medical equipment manufacturer, for example, or even an OEM for cars, for example, right? It's a very, very niche clientele, a very niche consumer. I think it makes a perfect sense for you to have less of your audience in mind, but more of your product in mind, because your audience is going to come to you. They are somehow already dependent on you for that product or for that service, either because it fulfills their, I don't know, entertainment needs, like I said, Xbox, PlayStation, entertainment needs, or if you are a car manufacturer, you are one of the big car manufacturers and you are supplying parts for airbags, for example. So I would care what is the latest development there, right?
Yep.
But on the other hand, I think if you're a young brand, if you're so that's another
if you're young,
aspect.
if you're young, you don't have a brand. So
Yeah.
the thing is like how do you actually get? So my question, actually going back to my question is how do you create this brand? For instance, do you actually talk about your product, which is one way of creating content, or do you actually talk about things which your audience will or people around you cares about, or you actually combine these two? And I kind of like, even in the very start of business, you actually learn in a university that business and the owner is actually two entity, right?
Yes.
So you actually make an entity out of your business and you give it a persona, and it actually cares about stuff. It has its own opinion, and it talks to you actually have these people who are representing that's why I in the last few years, I think a lot of companies, you actually don't see their CEO. Who are they? You don't know. But some company, even their CEO is actually very present, and they're doing this personal branding.
Yes.
Right. So what's the right way for it?
I think the idea would of course be a mix of the two, right? But I think that to make it meaningful, I think you should be speaking to your audience. In what way? I mean, when I speak to the audience, I try to understand what the audience is about, right? So I'm speaking the language of the audience, basically, right? Speaking in a way that, is relatable to them, number one. Number two, in speaking to them, it's not just speaking for fun, right? I'm trying to, if I understand you, and that's what I'm trying to say, right? I'm one of you, I understand you, I would understand what are some of your needs. And therefore, what are some of the solutions you need to overcome those needs, right? And in that way, that's when I slot in the fact that I carry a particular product or a service that can solve that problem that you have. Right. So the approach, if all things being equal, all things ceteris paribus, of course, the approach I think would be to identify who your audience is, talk to them, and from talking to them, bring out the challenges that they face, and then approach it from there. And that's how I pitch my product or my service, right? Then that makes it very meaningful, because my audience will say, all right, this guy gets me, he's speaking my language sort of thing, or he's giving me the vibe that he gets it. And look, his solution is something that, it's something that I'm actually struggling with, for example, right? And I think this could apply to both B2B or B2C, right? Because when you speak to business owners or decision makers about, say, for example, process tools for your company, right? These are things that they might be struggling with. But when you have a generic message that just talks about your product, you're not making that connection, maybe. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's kind of like brings like what we shouldn't do when we are doing this contenting, right? Because first of all, when if you're creating content for the sake of content, then that's the wrong approach. I know, like, a lot of marketers will come up and say, "Oh no, you have to be present and be consistent and put consistently your content. It doesn't matter, It's consistency over quality, right?" And that is also somewhat true, right? In any of these platforms, particularly the digital platforms, if you want to be noticed, and whatever messaging you're putting out there, because it's free, and everyone is competing for attention, so you have to have this scale. You have to have this large amount of number. I would say digital landscape, right? You have to cover it as much as possible with relevant information, right? And the catch is here, relevant information, and you can actually put relevant information in a very boring way, right? You can just throw a PDF, copy pasting something from your doc and your brochure, right? Which is just some formal way of saying, oh, we have this and that. But that, like, we human, we don't talk like that. And this is, I think, a lot of corporate sector, they don't understand that the way they are sending email, the way they are talking, humans don't do that.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
We
Exactly.
want, we find interesting when there is humor. We find it interesting
Yeah.
when there is something unconventional, right? And I think a lot of marketers, they actually don't incorporate those kind of stuff, and they stay very formal, and therefore you are not getting the attention.
Yes.
And on the other extreme, someone actually gets very informal, which then becomes how do you say, irrelevant to the audience, right?
Yeah.
So you have to hit that balance in terms of you know what not to do when you are working with your creative, right? And we really have to understand the science behind the content. It's not just the message itself, it's how we perceive the message as humans. And I think a lot of us, we actually don't think about that science. And I have seen it many times where you actually hired expert and creatives, and then you are telling them what to do.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes,
like
exactly.
here is the content, but we have to get this approved by the CEO. And Stu has nothing, knows nothing about copywriting. Stu has he has no knowledge about typography, you know.
Yes. Yes.
And
yes.
or UX design, and you are actually waiting for his approval, and then he comes up and say, "Oh, I don't like these, and I don't like that."
Yeah.
Bro, like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what you think. You know?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that you touched on a few things there. I think this approval thing is something you're absolutely right. I think there's this fallacy that, you know, it's like, how hard can it be? Right? I mean, how hard can it be to come out with a creative or copy a piece of copy, you know?
Yeah.
So everyone has an opinion.
Yeah.
Right. And I always like to think about it. I think you brought about this example I think in one of our previous episodes. It's like, you know, if you were to go to a hospital and you meet a surgeon, right? You're not gonna tell the surgeon that no, that's not how you cut the into the kidney. You have to do. You don't do that, right? I don't agree with this cutting of this kidney in this way. Please cut it another way.
Yeah,
You don't
exactly.
say that, right? But when it comes to creatives or whatever, everyone has an opinion because everyone feels that they can do it. But actually, it's a skill, isn't it?
It is.
It's a skill. It's a
And I think that's why in a lot of organizations, these creatives, they are just a puppet. They have no significance of work, and they are just doing what they have been told to.
Yes.
And they're like putting up this content, and they're like getting salary at the end of the month. They have no motivation whatsoever to come and think about ideas and new way of communicating and make their work shine, those kind of stuff. And then you on your LinkedIn feed, you actually see all this nonsense that that coming up, and I was like, well, like who's paying for this, and like why it's here, like what are you doing, like is it marketing? Is this how you actually do content marketing? That's sad at the same time, and knowing that it can, like, the people you have in your organization, that they have the skill, but you still don't believe it, and you actually tell them what to do, and you are hurting yourself at the end of the day.
Exactly. So I think that there is this level of trust that needs to be there. Also, there has to be a process. I think even for the creative process, there is a process, right? And this process is not just about getting the images or the content out there, whether it's a video, whether it's an animation, it doesn't matter. That's another part of the process. But that is the output part of the process. There's the input part of the process. And the input part of the process is, of course, understanding who you're trying to talk to, understanding your audience. And this is when different stakeholders in that particular organization can have a say. Right, the different stakeholders can come in and say, all right, my customer is somebody who is, I don't know, high powered, they don't have time to read anything, the email needs to be short, succinct, to the point, blah blah blah. This is when that comes in, right? And then you have to let go and let the creatives figure out what's the best way to express this, to explain what symbols or whatever. And this, I think you're right, and this gives the room for innovation. If you handhold all the way till the end, then like you said, if I'm a creative, okay, what do you want? All right, I do it, and I don't have to add any of my own creative input. It makes life easier for me, actually.
Yeah.
Right, as a creative.
Exactly. My job is not really creating marketing content. It's actually pleasing my boss.
Exactly. But the annoying part for me is that when they look at the KPIs associated with whatever ad or whatever email or whatever they send out, they kind of blame it back on the creatives instead of looking back at it was a joint decision. No, it's creative was not so good this time, huh?
Exactly. And I think it's because like I said, a lot of us, we are not aware of the science of communication and science of this content marketing.
Yes.
How people communicate and like how you can actually grab attention.
Yes.
They don't have any idea. And, if you actually talk to creators, even just, Google some number, and you will see like the creators who are at the highest level, they actually, spend hundreds and thousands of dollars just for thumbnails, right? Because that's the gateway to begin with. Like, if my thumbnail is not interesting, nobody is clicking on my video.
Yeah.
Right? And then you actually show this kind of stuff to the executive, and it doesn't look professional.
Yeah, I think contenting also has several parts, right? One part is getting awareness, getting your attention, right? Second part is rewarding that attention that I'm giving to you, right? And the third part is the call to action, what I want you to do as a result of stages 1 and 2, right? And I think that there is sometimes people sometimes forget that there are 3 parts to this discussion. This conversation you're having with your customer, right? So either you overly focus on part 1, which is trying to get awareness, right? Or you kind of forget that you need to kind of reward this attention, or you don't have a call to action at all. So at the end of the day, there is nothing satisfying. There's nothing contenting about it, right? So I think it's a 3-step process here. But
exactly.
But I think what would you say would be the best way, for example, to tackle part 1, which is to get your attention? What's the best way to get attention then?
Well, I think you have to look at the best practices. That's the first thing. We because there is so much content that we are consuming, and there are so much content out there. It's very easy to figure out like what people are watching. I'm pretty sure there is like 5 years ago, people be like banging their head against the wall, like go on TikTok, it will be big, right? I'm pretty sure. And a lot of people, they don't give a damn. And now they're like, I wish I should be there. I wish I were there. Right? And I'm pretty sure even right now, like if you want to find out like platform wise, what is the best practices, and it's actually about adaptation. The content, if you want to create bang on content which will perform, which will create value, and which will entertain people, so the first thing is you have to be in front of them, and in order to do that, you have to adapt whatever features these platforms are coming out with, and you have to be the first to adapt as soon as possible. And that's how you actually get
Yeah.
in front of people as soon
Yeah.
as possible,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And you actually push the
Mm-hmm.
limit. You actually push the limit. Because any platform that you are on, their main target
Yeah.
is to make people stay here, right? And that's why they are, putting up all these, the feedback, the algorithms, so on and so forth. And they are constantly trying to put relevant information in front of
Yeah.
your eyes on your screen. And they
Yeah.
are really good
Yeah.
at doing their job. And you just have to be relevant and create interesting that will just hook
Yeah.
the user, and they will actually just stay
Mm-hmm.
and find
Mm-hmm.
it interesting. That's all your job.
Mm-hmm.
If you can do that, that's your part.
Mm-hmm.
The rest, LinkedIn will
Mm-hmm.
take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
YouTube will take care of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Facebook will take care of it. So it's
Mm-hmm.
about best practices and
Mm-hmm.
making your message interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It's 1 hour long or 2 hour long, or and we can actually talk about how we can make content interesting, right? And then it's about thinking like what the
Yeah.
people cares about. Probably you are working in an industry, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you can invite someone that people listen to that has credible authority on this topic, right? For instance, like something like podcast, right? You bring guests that people actually listen to or
Yeah.
people look up to because of
Yeah.
this topic, right? That can be one way. Another way is going really hardcore creative. You actually understand the typography, like, oh, this font actually working better. You do this testing with your with your creative stuff, right? What is getting more response, more engagement, right? So I think these are a few ways of figuring out all this transition, even in creativity. Like as a marketer, it's somewhat also like coding. When you are a programmer, you always have to be aware, like what is the next language, what is the next thing coming out, and you have to be up to date. And it's same with marketer. You really have to understand
Correct.
what's new in the corner,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
adapt as soon as
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think as far as contenting is concerned, right, we kind of have the tools in the market that can allow us to amplify our message, right? Using Facebook or YouTube and all the algorithms that are associated with them, right? That allow you to somehow or rather stumble onto the right audience, right? Then it's your job to basically create that content that can attract them and can sustain them so that they get to the call to action part, right? And then of course feel that they've not wasted that 30 seconds, right? They didn't skip the ad, they didn't turn to another channel, or they didn't look away from your ad, and so on and so forth, right? I think that's the important thing. And I think that it's very important to remember that because we live in a world with so much stimulus, because we live in a world that allows us to consume even more because of the short nature of some of these ads or some of these videos and so on and so forth, right? It's becoming shorter and shorter, basically. That kind of increases the amount of stimuli you can be exposed to, right? So it's important to remember that trying to increase more stimuli, it might not be the answer. Right, trying to be as loud and as bright and whatever might not be the answer, because people have tuned out already, right? And that's why I think a very impactful way to get attention is immediately you capture something that is meaningful to your customer, right? Whether it's a word or a phrase or an image that immediately captures their attention for that moment, just enough for them to see the next, just enough for them to be rewarded for paying attention. I think psychology always has this idea of positive reinforcement, right? And that's what you want to do, right? You want to create this positive reinforcement so that people pay more and more attention to your voice, So your brand or your product or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That it stands out from the crowd, not because it's loud, not because that it's bright or it's full of stimuli,
Yeah.
no, but because the
Yeah.
stimulus matters. I think that's important.
Yeah. And another thing I would add is whenever you're creating content or you're thinking about content, your content marketing also should be categorized. Categorized in a sense like categorized according to the objectives, right? Some of your content, it just probably you just want engagement, you just want to be up there, right? Some of the content you want people to take action, right? And these categories are different, and you have to understand as which industry you are. You have to be familiar. Here the number actually kicks in. You have to be familiar, like what is the normal engagement, what is the normal views in this industry, right? And because we get actually upset when our content is not performing well, and performing well is very subjective, and it's also depends on which industry, which product, what are you selling, right? So you have to really keep that in mind, and then actually push yourself to create content.
Yes.
Otherwise you will lose motivation.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? Because you'll say, oh, our content marketing is not working, we have to do something, we have to be viral and other things. You have to understand, like, how many companies which actually selling somewhat similar product went viral. What's their click-through rate? Their numbers can really help you to understand the landscape or the realm of content marketing in your industry. Yeah. And I think that is very important.
I think that is very important. I think your understanding of your audience is a big part. To be fair, the result of your contenting, right, what you actually produce, is sort of an examination of how well you know your audience, isn't it? Because if you don't know them well enough, then this content is going to be found relevant by somebody. If you don't know them, then it will just be lost in the sea of stimuli or in the sea of information that we receive on a daily basis.
Bro, another thing I want to actually throw in the conversation, because we talked a lot about knowing the audience and is it relevant to your audience, what they care about, but I want to throw this question: how do you know your audience? What's the process?
There's a few ways to look at this, right? But I think if you already have,
and I want you to be as objective as possible. Break it down for layman.
If I'm a business owner, if I already have products in my catalog, in my inventory, right, then the first thing I would need to do is to understand what my product is and who would it be relevant for. That's the first indication I have of who my audience is. Then, and by who it might be for could be very simple, right? Like we go back to that sneakers example, right? The Adidas sneakers, for example, right? There might be a couple of user profiles that I think this is relevant for, maybe based on historical data. A little bit of historical data, a little bit of trend data, a little bit of fashion data or creative data, whatever it is, right? But basically, I kind of interlace all that together and formulate about two or three different segments of customers I can myself do in a thought process. Imagine them wearing these shoes, for example, right? Then I step forward and I then trying to connect this with who is actually out there. All right, so I identify that I think 18 to 25-year-olds will wear these sneakers because they are the trendiest people, their behavior, their purchase behavior as such and so on. Then I go out and I find information about 18 to 25-year-olds, and then I realize, oh, actually they're no longer wearing sneakers these days. They're all walking around in flip-flops. Oh no. So that my assumption is challenged, right? So I go back to the drawing board, and this is what I mean by understanding your customer. So I know that my assumption was 10 years ago, 18 to 25-year-olds were our highest spenders. But as it turns out, times have changed, right? Then now I have to think back, and from that information I can go, oh, perhaps it is not 18 to 25, I have to move it up. 35 to 25 to 35. Right, this is the group. Because 10 years ago, they were the ones buying the sneakers, so 10 years now, I should put my efforts on them. And if these 18 to 25-year-olds decide to cross over, great for them. But this is not, my target is those that with the highest probability of purchase. And this is my knowledge of the customer, right? Based on my product. Now, when I come out with the creatives, of course, it should come from the perspective of where my customer is right now. What is enticing for my customer right now? Maybe they are the 25 to 35-year-olds. They are into some sort of fashion sort of trend, for example, right? They're into TikTok, for example, and that already defines where I put the ad and where I can find them, right? And that's what how I would approach knowing your customer, basically on a very high level basis, I think.
I think that's I would agree to it to a certain degree, where you actually saying, okay, I have this imaginary persona who will probably buy my products, and then I actually go out in the world to interact these kind of personas, and then figure out the bottlenecks, or maybe there. Another example I might give. So even if you don't have imaginary persona, you actually don't have any idea. Another thing could be is if you are coming up in the market with with an existing product, and there are competitors, you actually study your competitors. If you want to open a restaurant right next to the restaurant is already there, you actually see it outside and see like how many people are going inside and how they look like, and what's their attributes, right? So these are the research that you can do to understand your audience, and then think about contenting.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's absolutely right. I think how you collect information about your customers, it depends on market research that is already out there, competitors that are already there, so you understand what are they doing right and what are they doing wrong, and where are the gaps in between, right? I think that is those are easy ways of understanding. You don't even need a lot of resources for that, right? As you said, you can just sit outside the restaurant and figure it out, kind of thing, right? But you don't really need you can participate in the customer experience of your competitors and then understand why it works or why it doesn't work, right? And I think you mentioned that in the previous podcast as well. Exactly. It's also a bit of a combination of data, a combination of observations, a combination of experience, but also a combination of this kind of gut feeling, right? That you might have, whether it works or not. And I think this is how you validate that. And you mentioned that earlier as well. This A/B testing is a great validation method. And I think for A/B testing is a very important concept, because it is a willingness to fail. Because when you do an A/B test, one will succeed and one will not, right? Or one will succeed more than the other. But you are willing to have something that does not work and improve from there. And I think this is a very, very important point that we should remember. So I think there's one other point I wanna bring up. One other question I wanna bring up, which is related to contenting as well, right? CMS systems. What's your take?
Yes. I think it's good for organization of your content, because I think the scale, that's how you sort of like scale your content, because it's inevitable that you need content marketing, and we are going towards the future. It's increasing. It's not decreasing in any shape or way or form. And having a content marketing system, content management system, you can actually develop your own templates. You can develop. It actually gets rid of a lot of friction, and it's easy to find the content and repurpose them, right? Because at the end of the year, you will have tons of content, and then you need to look at the analytics, you need to look at the numbers, you need to which one performed better, what I wrote in the copywriting, right? And it's a headache
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right? It's the headache. So having a content management system that actually
Yes.
helps you out in that process, in content marketing process. So I think it's excellent to
Right.
have a content management system. But I think before any of that, you really have to figure out
Exactly.
the fundamentals
Exactly.
of content
Exactly.
marketing.
Yeah.
And then think about all this process automation and other things that we talked about yesterday
Exactly.
in our podcast. But in this note, I want to say, like, if you actually made this far and enjoyed our conversation,
Yes.
please hit like and subscribe. That really helps us
Yeah.
and our channel. And as part of our what we do, right? We offer content marketing services. If you don't understand your audience, you don't know how to grab attention, or you are basically struggling with all these facets in marketing,
Yep.
drop us a comment or just go to our website and just drop the email and message like what's your struggle is
Yep.
about, and we'll reach out. And we are saying this. It's not just our marketing. We are being authentic because we want to create a community of marketers, and we want to help out people. And it doesn't really matter. You don't have the money. You can't actually afford a consultant at the moment. It doesn't matter. Just be out there and just tell us what's your struggle, and we'll
Exactly.
reach
Exactly.
out. Exactly. And
No.
sorry,
I think,
Heikel, I cut you
think,
off.
I think
What?
that's absolutely right. I think we have an episode on automation, and I think there's a lot more that we discussed there. And I just wanted to tease our audience if they haven't seen that, if they haven't heard that episode, to go back and look at it. But Naeem is absolutely right. I think our purpose is to try and democratize a little bit the idea of marketing and the efforts required for marketing in a way that is relevant and effective for everyone. And it's not. It doesn't have to be that complicated. It doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be that difficult. I think, and this is how we want to try and get those solutions out there. And like Naeem says, if we can develop a community of marketers who are of the same mindset, right, to create meaning, to create purpose, that I think will be a step in the right direction, generally.
Exactly. And our basically we I even talked about it with Heikel. Our goal is actually make you as affluent so that you don't need us anymore.
Exactly.
And I think that's the idea we came together, because we were facing so many stuff that we disagree with, and we want to put our opinion out there, and that's how this whole podcast came about. So you know how to contact us.
Cool. Great. Well, then on that note, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from you, or we look forward to you joining us in our next episode. And on that note, good luck, and see you next time.
See ya. All right, bruh.